Hello, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I'm William Becker, your host, and I have a very special guest today, Mr. Rob Guttrow. Rob is a prolific author and an incredibly talented um, medium and pet medium, and we have some similarities, and we like to travel to historic places that have dead people for us to talk to. um, and um, join the chat and the rest of it. I think we've already got how to get a hold of him up here. Um, aha! I'm going to put something else up here in just a second. And and Rob, welcome. Sorry, I can't do two things at once.
Yeah, hey William, thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
It's great to see you. It's like the
You
only
too.
time we get a chance to talk is if you're on the show.
Yeah, this is true. We're both pretty busy. So
Yeah. Well, can you give a little bit of a sum up of some of what you've been busy with lately before we get into the meat and potatoes? Or
sure. For the folks that don't know me, I'm a medium and I'm a paranormal investigator, and I specialize in pets too. So I'm also a pet medium. That means I communicate with people who lost their pets, with pets who passed, for people who lost their pets. Um, so um, although I love to write books, and I write these books to share my experiences with you so that you'll understand what I know about what happens after we pass, whether we stay earthbound as a ghost, which I explain in the books, or we cross over as a spirit. So I define those, and I also use a lot of explanations based on the science of energy, because I'm also a scientist. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do. Um, I am um, I am doing a lot of things here in New England. I do a lot of rescue events where I give lectures on how pets communicate from the afterlife as fundraisers for animal rescues, and I have some planned in Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine. So I'm all over the New England states,
yeah,
and
it sounds fantastic. And fascinating. Um, and how lucky you get to do that much traveling over there. Such a beautiful area you live in.
it is really beautiful. Lots of history, and um, I'm looking forward to the fall when
Yeah.
everything's colorful and cool.
Yes, yes. Your summer weather isn't my favorite.
No, and your summer weather isn't my favorite either, apparently.
It's not mine either right now. If we, hopefully the heat pump isn't making too much noise because it's already 100 and it's running a lot today.
Oh,
So
that's insane.
I hope the house doesn't take off from the spinning of the electric meter out front.
Right. We're in the same boat here at the East Coast.
Yeah,
So,
I've been reading and well, let's see. I don't know. Is that
oh,
something you want to talk about before we get going?
sure. Yeah, it sounds like that's a question about pets and the afterlife. And
Yeah.
so right, yeah, right out of the chute here, um, anybody can communicate with their pet, and that's why I wrote the books in the Pets and the Afterlife series, to teach you how to look for those signs, because there is no such thing as a coincidence. Also, our pets in spirit come visit, and they behave much the same way they did when they were alive. So you may see them in their favorite spot. You may feel like your cat who passed away walk across your bed. You may hear a bark in another room or meow. Um, they may lead you to another pet that looks like them. So for anyone who lost a pet, um, I've been told that people have been buying my books and giving them as a gift because it brings them healing. and it also lets them recognize how to see those signs from their beloved pet. So there you go.
Great. And that doesn't contacting them and working with them doesn't keep them or make them trapped.
No, it does not. So um, I have found that about 99.5% of all pets cross over.
Hmm.
And that's because, as you know, pets can sense who is a good person or where something is a good place. So when they pass, they see the light, the doorway to the other side, they will they will go up there. They will go there. They are not stubborn enough to stay behind as an earthbound ghost. And really, being an earthbound ghost is not a good idea because you're trapped and nobody can hear you except for me. So don't worry about your pets. They've all crossed over.
Right.
That's
And
what. There's no dinosaur ghosts. That's why they've, they sense peace and goodness, and that's why they've all crossed over.
that's interesting, and that's one of those questions I see online every once in a while. And but it makes me ask, one of the things I did an investigation years ago at the coast with a group of people I was on. It was a nice road trip for us. And one of the things, and this was long enough ago, I hadn't quite gone professional yet. I had pressure to go professional, but I was still a little hesitant. And um, I had these two dogs lead me to graves that turned out to be theirs, but they
Hmm.
weren't the current homeowner's dogs. They were the dogs from the previous homeowner. And I didn't get the sense that they were stuck it or anything at all. It's just that they would come. It's like they liked the place and they'd come and hang out occasionally.
Hmm.
And I mean, humans do that, so I would assume animals do that.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
you already just said when they come and sit on your bed and stuff like that. So,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Sleeping wasn't easy last night. Um, you've got a new book out. Um, you're talking about one of my favorite places. Why don't you give us kind of run with it and tell us about this book? I've got links up here already, everybody, where you can log on and get a hold of Rob's website and find his books and all that. Um, and please do. He's an excellent author. Okay.
Well, thank you, William. So I have three series of books. One is the Pets in the Afterlife, one that we talked about. Another one is called Ghosts versus Spirits. So the ones that are earthbound versus the ones that have crossed over. And this series is Ghosts on a Medium's Vacation. And this is my third book in the series. And I was really excited to write it because I really wrote it more like a book you could use on travel.
Hmm.
There's a lot of history in it. Um, enough to just inform you about where we are in the book. There's also special links in almost every chapter to short 60-second videos that I made when I was at those places and the experience that I had. So you can hear me talk about the experience and see the place around me on those video shorts. And all of those video shorts are also on my YouTube page. So you can get, and there's pictures. Every chapter has pictures. So you can see the pictures, you can hear me talking about it and immerse yourself in the place through the video, and then you can read about all the background that I found out after I came back. So, um, so uh, in 2015, we went to Ireland, took a vacation. We had never been there, and just like in England when I went, I didn't expect to hear from anybody on the other side, but there were a lot of people who wanted to talk.
Hmm.
So, so I've taken people to I take readers to different places where I went, from Dublin to Galway to Limerick. The Dingle Peninsula that's on the North Atlantic Ocean,
Right.
Cork, County Cork, and Cashel, where the famous Rock of Cashel Fortress is located. And all of these places had ghosts and stories that they wanted to share. So there's even the book even has a past life experience thrown in, not from me, but from my partner.
Okay.
Um, so, so, so many different places that we went.
What about the past life experience?
Well, gosh. So my partner, Tom, I'll just call him Tom, always felt drawn to medieval England,
Hmm.
and which is why we went to England, and things were eerily familiar to him there.
Hmm.
But um, we did not expect him to have a past life experience in Ireland, but it was really really strange. So I need to put my thoughts together and figure out where this is. Um, um, it was near the Blasket Islands. That's what it was. So the Blasket Islands are on the Dingle Peninsula. It is
Okay.
basically the west coast of Ireland,
Right.
and the word Blasket, by the way, means dangerous, and they call it the Blasket Islands because there's a lot of dangerous weather because it's right off the Atlantic, so you get a
Right.
lot of
Getting
storms.
there can be difficult, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's also, interestingly enough, on the Dingle Peninsula, there are these. I'm deviating here, but there are these stone huts, and they're huts. They look almost like a teepee or a beehive, and they're called beehive huts, and they're made of rocks,
Hmm.
and they were constructed by the ancient people that lived there, and you can still see them today. There's
Incredible.
a Yeah, it's really fascinating. So they pile them up, and you keep piling them up to the top until they form a little pyramid.
How long ago were those built?
Um, I'll get to that. Get to
Okay,
that in a
sorry.
second. Um, I I want to get back to the past life experience, and then I'll get back
Right.
to the. But I bring that up only because there are so many fascinating areas in this part of this island of Ireland here.
Hmm.
So um, the Great Blasket Island, which is the huge island that's off the coast here, it used to be inhabited, and then finally, in 1953, it was abandoned because you had to ferry over back and forth and carry stuff
Hmm.
back and forth. Um, but here's where the past life experience came in. We went into um, we went into a museum, and that's where it happened. When before we went to England, Tom always felt drawn to the Tudor period, the
Okay.
1500s,
Right.
and he didn't understand. So he did a past life regression with a therapist, and that during that session, he described this small home where he lived that was made of like stone on the outside, and it was painted white, and it had like a thatched roof, and it had one window in the front, one door in the front.
Hmm.
Then you walk in, and it's just one room.
Right.
You have a bed on the side, you have cooking pots, and maybe a chair. So we walked into this museum. It's called the Blasket Center Museum, and it contained one exhibit of a reconstructed typical Irish home from the Middle Ages. And he stopped, and he stared, and his mouth dropped open, and he gasped, and he said, "This this is exactly what he had described living in under that hypnosis, that regression."
Right.
So it was unnerving that he knew that he lived somewhere likely in Ireland, and would go over to England during the Middle Ages, or maybe there were homes like that also in England.
Right.
Fascinating stuff.
Oh, that's incredible. Good for him. That doesn't happen that often.
No, no. So for the folks that feel drawn to a different place and a different time, um, that you've never been, it's very likely that you lived there and then before
Hmm.
in your previous life.
I've found that to be true in a lot of my own travels. Um, Places I'm drawn to, having finding past lives, sometimes literally stumbling into them, or like stumbling into your grave or something. That's
Hmm.
always interesting.
Oh
But
yeah.
but I love it. Good for him. Now, did it shake him up, or was he pretty okay? I mean, when you start getting into metaphysics like this, some people have a little trouble with it.
I mean, he was okay because he had already gone through the past life regression, but just to see something exactly as he described from centuries ago
Hmm.
it was pretty unnerving. So it took him a while to process that.
Hmm.
And I had that similar experience as we talked about before in Tombstone, Arizona,
Right.
where I walked into the town for the very first time before the internet and before anything. And all I had was a map of the state of Arizona with just a dot on it for the town of Tombstone, and I was able to give a tourist directions how to get to a courthouse without ever being there. And then that was my revelation. So,
Right. That's pretty incredible. Did you figure out which side of the law you were on in Tombstone?
oh, I was on the right side.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's probably
Of
why I like
course,
spring rooms today.
and of course, in the right period of time in Tombstone, the two sides kind of were one often. Um, the good guys and the bad guys were kind of the same people to a degree.
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy time. But there was only that town only existed from 1881 to 1889 when it thrived, and then it didn't. But
Okay.
um,
I didn't realize it was that short. I've been there, but I was in junior high, I think. It's
oh,
been a
okay.
long time. So not long after they stopped using the mines there, I think, um, back when they're still using wagon trains. Um, but anyway, bad age joke on my part. Excuse me.
Excuse me. So
Mhm.
I have your answer to the beehive hunts. I wanted to get back to that
Okay.
because you mentioned you wanted to know how old they are. They date back to the 12th century.
Okay.
So it's thought that they were inhabited by hermits and followers of Saint Peter. But they also think that maybe some pagans also dwelled in it, like the Druids.
Okay. That's fascinating. And when you said Saint Hermit houses in Saint Peter, I had a vague memory of reading about that someplace. Um, I've been to the Dingle Peninsula, but I haven't seen those houses. Um, and it sounds I need to go back. Um,
Yeah.
where are how does this process work for you? And how are you drawn? How do you work when you're over there? Do you just open up, and where else did you go? What are some of the stories you want to tell us? And I know I'm throwing it all out at once, but just put it together however you want to, whatever works
Okay.
for you.
I'll pull some stuff together.
Yeah.
So how it works for me, as a medium, it's changed over time with me,
Right.
um, and so sometimes I can see them in my mind, earthbound ghosts.
Hmm.
Sometimes they will share things with me, like names or dates, or um, they will share pain of death, which has happened a lot,
Hmm.
sadly. They'll tell me why they're there. They'll tell me why they're connecting with me. They want their story heard.
Hmm.
And sometimes I felt them. So I felt them, heard them. I've visibly seen only a very few, but
Right.
mostly they show up. I can see them in my mind, and that's why I sketched them out. And in this book, William, you'll find that there are several ghosts that I sketched out so that people
Excellent.
would know what I'm looking at. Um,
Excellent.
One of the interesting things that I want to point out is that there's a lot of residual energy in Ireland.
Right.
Not everything is haunted. And what I mean by residual energy for those watching is that when we have an emotional event, whether it's happy or whether it's sad, if we're in a structure, that emotional energy gets soaked into the walls. It gets imprinted in the walls. So that
Right.
for visitors who come later, like you and me, we bring our own emotional energy, and that makes that other energy come out, and we can feel it. So,
Hmm.
um, one of the interesting things I thought about though in Ireland was how weather affects residual energy, because
Okay.
the Blasket Islands and the Dingle Peninsula were places where there was a lot of really bad weather.
Right.
So, um, if you think about it, weather is an energy. It's a constant exposure to rain and to winds. And just like rain and winds can erode the coast, they can erode energy.
Right.
So I liken it to rain washing a fingerprint off the hood of a car or a smudge or something like that. So, so these structures that have been in ruins, and there are a lot of ruins in Ireland.
Yes.
Yeah, so some of them really didn't have a whole lot of residual energy, and
Hmm.
it was kind of disappointing to me, but on the other hand, not surprising. Um, but I would have liked to have felt something in some of the various castles and abbeys and churches and places that we went. But there wasn't a lot, and that's because of that weather energy eroding it.
Okay. I had never thought about that before or heard that before. That's interesting.
See what happens
It
when you
makes
talk to a
sense.
meteorologist?
Yeah. Yep. I know, and it does make sense. Um,
So there were, I mean, there were a lot of places that were residual, but there were places that actually did have ghosts.
mhm.
Um, and one of the the places that I didn't expect a ghost was in a castle called Dromelin, Dromelin Castle. So Dromelin Castle now stands as a luxury bed and breakfast.
Okay.
It's a beautiful property, and the tour travel agent that we used across the pond vacations, they they let us stay there one night, and what a treat that was, because this is a former castle from the 5th century.
Wow.
Yeah,
5th century. So we're going back. Well, the Romans weren't in Ireland, but we're going back to that period. The Celts are still in charge, and wow, that's impressive.
yeah, and to see that it's still standing was even more impressive.
Uh-huh.
Because some of the other places were not. So for anybody who wants to go to stay at a castle, um, Dromelin Castle is located in County Clare, Ireland. It's in a place called Newmarket on Fergus. It's basically southwestern Ireland,
Okay.
and it was there that I ran into a ghostly woman that walked the hallways. Totally unexpected. Um, by the way, another little more information about the castle. It's so big, and it's on such a huge property that it's often used for. Uh, they have banquet halls used for weddings, and they have a restaurant, and a cocktail bar. There's a spa, there's a pool, a steam room, a sauna. They have a giant golf course, horseback riding, walking trails, fishing, you name it, they've got it. So you could spend a week there and get
Fantastic.
lost.
Excellent. What a place to get lost.
I know.
Uh,
Sadly, though, we only had one night. Excuse me, and it was kind of an overcast day when we were there. But so the original structure um, that stood there has been rebuilt, and we stayed in a tower section that was built in the 15th or early 16th century, and we were on the top floor. For those who know Irish history, there are a lot of famous families like the O'Briens and the McInerney family.
mhm.
You'll find them scattered throughout Ireland and associated with various other castles.
Right.
So the O'Briens were connected to this. But getting to the ghost, this totally threw me off. Unfortunately, this time the ghost was not in my room, like back in England. There was a male ghost in my room.
It was in your room. Oh, in England it was a ghost in your room. Okay.
Yeah.
And this one wasn't. Okay. Sorry.
This one, fortunately, was not. So, so we were walking from our room to the restaurant, and you have to walk through various hallways, which are all rooms. And as I was walking past a hallway very slowly, I happened to look down the hallway, and my head started to hurt, which means that I'm in the presence of ghosts. Usually, I get a headache. And there was a woman, and she was coming toward me down the hallway in period dress, like she was in 1800s dress, and so she was coming down the hallway, and I turned to Tom and I said, "Wow, look at that! They have people in period costume that are walking around, probably to help the tourists figure out where to go and so forth." And then I kept watching her because I stopped for a minute. I kept watching her, and then she walked right through a closed door into a room. And then I said, "Okay, she's dead."
Yeah. Did Tom see her?
No, he did not. He was looking at some of the architecture on the floor that we were in.
Right.
So he was looking at another place, and I was standing still, and he had wandered off. But
Okay.
yeah, so I actually made a sketch of her while I was standing there, and that sketch is in the book. And she looked like she was in her 50s or 60s. She had dark wavy hair. She's kind of on the slender side, and her gown was dark blue colored, and it looked like satin.
Okay.
So, and anyway, so I made a little video that while I was there, right after I saw her go walk through the door, I said, "Oh, I needed to document this."
Right.
And so she told me she lives in the 1800s, and when I came home, I was actually able to figure out who she would be. So
Right.
for anybody
I
who
was
wants to
wondering
go,
if you were able to find out who, because at that period they would have known the residents pretty well.
yeah.
But
So I
you didn't.
did, but it's in the book, so I'm going to
So
need it.
you have to read the book. I need to get a copy of the book from you. We'll talk afterwards. And people further in the chat, you can see how to get a hold of the books. So go back up there and check it out.
I am happy to tell you that since I talked to you last, that all of my books are now available on audiobook too.
Oh,
So,
fantastic!
yeah. So I've been getting questions a lot from people who say they like to listen to books while they're driving or on Spotify or something like that, and now you can. So,
Well, and this is something too, because I can see how people could take a book like this one when they go to Ireland, and when they're wandering around some of the spots that you've are talking about,
mhm.
be using as one of the guidebooks while they're there.
Yeah, and
And
that's really why I wrote it the way I did, and I organized all of the different places in in alphabetical order by county. So
oh,
everything's by county. So like
right.
County Clare, County Cork, etc., etc. Um, and that's how you will read the book. So if you know what county you're going to be in, all you have to do is look in the book where it says which section of the book is the county you're in, and then you can find all the different places that had either intelligent haunts, ghosts, or
Mhm.
residual energy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, are there any of the other ones that you want to talk to us about?
Oh gosh. So have you ever done any paranormal investigations in a jail or prison?
I've done them in forts that have had, old military that have had jail places. I haven't done investigations, but I've spent time in dungeons in
Oh,
castles that go back quite a considerable distance. Um,
so
but as in a prison itself, no.
have you found there were intelligent haunts there, or was it residual, or both?
A little bit of both, and for me, I a lot of times it's kind of like it's residual, except that they can actually have be in contact. It's like with the soul and talk directly anyway. There's
Hmm.
kind of a combination a lot of times I find, and maybe it's just the way I work. Um, but I find that happens a lot. The lines of all the definitions blur for me.
Okay,
Um, but that's just I can't do anything the way everybody else does. Uh,
that's good. That's what makes you unique.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It gets me into trouble, but that's okay. It's
Well, yeah.
always fun trouble as um or good trouble as we would. Oh, geez, what was his name? My brain and names anymore. The senator that passed away not long ago, who was part of the civil rights.
Oh, right. Good trouble. Yeah.
Lewis. Lewis.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. So okay.
So the reason I ask is that the most haunted location that I visited when I was in Ireland is the Cork City Jail.
Okay.
It was quite active. I have visited other abandoned prisons before. There was one in Maryland that I went to. Uh, they let the public tour it because they were going to tear it down,
Okay.
and that had a lot of heavy negative residual energy. And as you would expect, I mean, people are imprisoned in there, and they may die in there, and so forth. And so I found that some that prisoners are apt to stay behind. Um, some prisoners, because if they have any kind of an upbringing and exposure to religions or something that tell you that there's something bad on the other side, they will be afraid to cross over.
Right.
Yeah.
They're afraid they're going to rot in hell or something.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
and I think we discussed this before, but in my experience, there is no hell.
In
There's
mine, that's the same thing. Exactly.
Yeah, it's just peace and love and acceptance. It's all
And
positive
healing
energy
and
and healing.
healing and growth and learning as our soul continues its journey. Yeah.
Yes. So sadly, some of the people didn't get that, and
Mm.
they stayed behind as earthbound ghosts because they were afraid of
Right.
retribution. Um, And that's actually what happened here in Cork City Jail. So um, I met 8 different ghosts that are still inhabiting Cork City Jail.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite a lot. Um, I sketched out, I think I sketched out 2 of them, and I found out who they were. Um,
Well, great.
but the first thing that struck me was that um, I didn't. I had just come into the front door, and I had an experience. Um, so the Cork City Jail also provided me with the rare experience of photographing an actual ghost, and that is on the cover of the book Ghosts of Ireland on a Medium's Vacation.
Now, can you hold that up and show us? Is that possible, or do you not want to do that? Or is
Um,
it not easy to do?
I don't have it readily handy. It's
Oh,
kind of
okay.
it's behind my backdrop.
Okay.
So, but
So the
anybody.
backdrop is great, so you don't have to. We won't ask you to disturb it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, people can just go on Amazon and look Ghosts of Ireland on a Medium's Vacation, and you can see the cover. So, uh, in the when I was in the jail, I was on the second floor, and that's where I sensed that there was somebody walking down the corridor. And a lot of these corridors, there are many corridors in this jail. It's a huge structure.
Mhm.
Um, so I stopped at one of the corridors that had bars, and I put the camera between the bars, and because I sensed that there was a man walking, so I kept clicking the pictures. I took 3 pictures, and in the third picture, it appears to be a man who was hunched over, and he's glowing almost green for some reason.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and I looked at the other pictures, and all 3 pictures are in the book, so you can see them in sequence.
Okay.
And you can clearly see there is a man, someone that looks like a man, walking across one of the corridors, and that's the cover of my book. That one picture.
Right.
Um, so it, like in Tombstone, I have a couple of pictures of ghosts that
Uh-huh.
in the Birdcage Theater, but that was kind of crazy to me.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so
And you did actually catch him on in a photograph is quite amazing. I mean, I don't even bother looking at my photographs anymore because when I ask them to, they just tell me off and say it's too much work. You can hear us and see us. Why should we do all that for you?
right,
You know, I always get the cheeky ghosts.
well, you can have them. um,
Uh, they're always great. I love them. But
so anybody that visits this, if you're at all sensitive, you're going to feel something. Um, this is a huge jail. Um, it's brick and cement, and it's absolutely astounding how big it is. It was built to house 19th century prisoners. It was built in 1824, and it's actually part of the Irish architectural heritage. So it's called a listed building, which means a
right.
historic.
Hmm.
So one my first experience was really weird because as soon as I walked through the front door, this big wooden door,
Hmm.
um, I heard a lot of men shouting outside in the parking lot. Now, we had just come in from the parking lot, and there was one other car in the parking lot, and nobody was outside. Absolutely nobody. Excuse me. Um, so I went back out. I peeked out, and I looked, and there was nobody there. I thought, what in the world? Where are those voices coming from? Um, it turned out that those voices were residual imprints of emotions that were generated by living men that were out there. So I went up to the front desk there and I bought my tickets and I said, "Excuse me, can you tell me if any really bad things happen out in the front area,
Mm,
outside of this front door? It's kind of a stone courtyard."
right.
And they said, "Well, yes, that's where we used to hang some of the prisoners. So we would bring other prisoners out to watch this, and then there would be a spectacle of people that could come along, and they would, of course, shout, scream, and so forth, and that's what happened. So when we pulled in, our energy, our emotional energy, added to that, and it made us hear it.
Okay.
So
That's
have you ever
fascinating.
heard voices, like residual voices?
Yes.
Where was that? Can you name a place that happened to you, and how it happened?
Um, my house.
Oh gosh.
And my house is not old, and nobody's died here. This housing development was fields when I was a kid. Um, and a variety of places. Now, a lot of times it's not quite as much residual because often it'll call my name or something or somebody else, but sometimes it
Oh yeah.
isn't. Um, but um, oh, where else have I heard them? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if I've heard them overseas or not. I've I've focused on so many things, um, and I've had a lot of conversations with beings overseas, but I'm not sure. I've certainly read the energy of the crowds and everything.
Sure.
Um,
It's hard to remember, really, unless
yeah,
unless you write it down and then publish
right,
it.
right, exactly. And so many. Well, because most of the conversations we get are really telepathic in a sense. They're mind to mind or
Yes.
mind to soul. But those audio ones do happen too, and they're usually a lot shorter in my experience.
Hmm.
Um, but you certainly, um, it's like there's music someplace, only there isn't. And
Yes. And
um,
I experienced that quite a bit.
okay,
Yeah. I often hear music and there's no music.
yep. I hear old time radio shows or newscasts, um, and I don't understand that at all. Again, here I go to bed and I'm hearing these things or
Hmm.
parties in my living room. I've gotten up to check if there was somebody in the house,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
or footsteps across the living room floor. And it's like, oh, once I know it's not a human being, not a living person, it's a ghost. It's like, oh, fine, have fun. Don't
Yeah.
make a
Okay.
mess. Let me sleep. You
I
know.
find that music is usually something that's shared by, like a spirit, like one that's crossed over of someone that we are connected to. So
Okay.
I know that my dad will often share often big band music because he used to play big band music.
Okay.
So I that gives me a sense of peace that he's around. But some of the
Yeah.
other some of the other music I have to figure out. But so see if you can figure out who they may be connected to. Um,
Yeah. Exactly. And I know a lot of what happens here isn't with related to my mom and dad because my mom would see things, um, little things here and there, and just thought it was her eyes playing tricks.
hmm,
Um, so there was activity here before they passed, and neither one of them died here, which of course we both know doesn't matter. You don't have to die in a location to go hang out at it.
nope,
But
absolutely. And if you're a spirit, if you're a ghost,
mhm,
you would, I guess. He's a bit stuck there, but um,
yeah,
so did your abilities come from your mother's side of the family?
I don't know. Neither side, neither of my parents were aware of anybody with them. Um, my dad's side, Grandma never talked about anything like that. She was always talking about the old country and old country stories, but nothing. She'd talk about, moon madness, where people would climb the church tower because they were asleep and it'd get violent if you tried to stop them, and things like that, because of just the way the they were sleepwalking in the full moon, and it
Okay.
was interesting. A lot of the a lot of the werewolf behavior, um, and it's supposedly something that happened while she lived in the old country. Um, and grandma didn't make things up like that. And my other grandma probably wouldn't have acknowledged it if it was around. Um,
But you said
and
your
so
mom
I don't
said
know.
some things though.
My mom used to see things out of the corner of her eye here. I don't
Okay.
know that she did a lot of other places. And I've seen a lot of the same types of things. And she just dismissed it as a trick of her eye. I want to say she heard things occasionally, but I don't know if that's true. And you know
So
how it's like.
maybe it does
I
come from your mom's side of the family.
pardon me. I'm sorry.
Maybe it does come from your mom's side of the family.
It could,
Yeah,
and I think everybody has psychic abilities anyway. It's just
I do
part
too.
of our DNA. It's we've only been we've had language, what, 30, 60,000 years. Um, we had to communicate before that,
Hmm.
and we've had to um, be able to know when to get out of the way of the saber-toothed tiger or the other guy with the bigger club, or most of those primitive tribes or those early human tribes were pretty peaceful, but I'm sure there were times when there was competition for resources.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we don't have much evidence of it, but I would imagine it happened at times. But um, so I that's interesting. That's more to look into. How does that Where does that come from, and how does that work? I just get a little put out at my nose out of joint when people have parties in my house and don't invite me.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's not very nice.
Yeah, but a lot of the music can be big band, other things too, and both my parents liked it. I liked it, but we had a lot of different music at home. Um,
Interesting.
I have a 10 kopeck piece that when it moves around, I know it's grandma, um, because we're Germans, but they had lived in Russia for a couple hundred years before
Oh,
immigrating,
wow.
and so it just appeared on a sofa one day after a party. It was under a pile of coats, and it wasn't on the sofa before the coats came, and I was the only one that had been to Russia, so um, um,
Interesting.
yeah, they're they're there, and I make good friends with ghosts. I mean, that's entities is the word I prefer to use because it's less defining. But
Yeah.
um, they, the ones that have tried to be mean to me, just because they were kind of nasty people,
Hmm.
when they see you're not afraid, they back down. You're not afraid, they back down, and they become friends. Sometimes it's like the bully. You don't let them bully you, or you call their bluff, and um,
Yeah.
they're okay. Um,
Yeah.
which is part of why I don't think they're evil spirits or demons.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them.
I don't think so either.
Mm-mm. And
Well,
I've
as you know, I've also befriended a spirit. That's what my book, Kindred
right,
Spirits, is
right,
that right there about
yeah,
me befriending Tom's late partner. So that's pretty cool.
yeah. I think that's a fascinating story. Actually, I love it.
Oh, by the way, working on finishing up Kindred Spirits 2 because this has been a long one. So yeah,
Okay.
that's
Excellent.
that's gonna be a fun a fun read. And it also teaches people, how their loved ones will communicate from spirit too. So it's not really just, it's not just his story, but it's using his story to teach everybody else what's going on. So,
Okay.
so getting back to the Ghost of Ireland, um,
Right.
for anybody who wants to visit Dublin, I have a whole chapter on Dublin, and I also included places that weren't haunted, that may have had some residual energy, but and tips like if you want to see the most places in Dublin and you don't have a lot of time, you can use the hop on hop off bus,
Okay.
and that's one of the ways. I mean, you can get off and explore something for half an hour. Another bus would be around in 20 minutes or something like that, and then it would
Yeah.
take you around the whole city. So I have tips like that too in the book. So if anybody is planning a trip to Ireland, that will help. Um, there's some other really fascinating things that I wrote about too, and one is it's a chapter that I call the Marshes Library Ghost History Mystery,
Okay.
because there's a ghost associated with this library in Dublin. His it's the library of Archbishop Narcissus Marsh, who lived in the 1600s.
Okay.
Um, and so he was a very learned man. He worked for Trinity College. He was a
Hmm.
musician too. He played something called the viol, viol. It's a type
Oh,
of bowstringed instrument, but it's not a violin.
right. No, they're beautiful sounding. I've heard
Oh,
them.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you are the very first person that knew what that is.
I'm a history nut.
Look at you.
So, um,
So this particular guy was really very learned. He was interested in various sciences like zoology and entomology, study of insects. He invented a lamp to light a large hall or church. Pretty
with
cool.
one lamp,
Yeah, yeah. I I don't know the details of it, but you should look it up.
I'm assuming lots of mirrors
Yeah,
reflect out or something. I don't know. That's amazing. Um, Truly a Renaissance man.
he was. Yeah. So one of the things, because he loved books, one of the things that he wound up doing was founding this library, and he wanted it to be public because he thought all knowledge should be shared with everybody and
Okay.
not not coveted. So um, it's right near St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin for anybody who wants to see it.
Oh
What's
yeah.
interesting about this library, though, William, is that we got there and I really wanted to go in it, and we got there 5 minutes before closing, and they
Oh,
wouldn't let us go in. So I stood at the door, and as I stood at the door, I could sense that there was a ghost of a man walking back and forth and up and down the corridors. Um, and I thought, what in the world? Who would? I mean, you know, I wouldn't mind being, a ghost in a library, really, because you can so much to read, a
I
lifetime worth
know.
of reading material. But
Right.
um, I wanted to know why he was there and who he was. Um, so um, one of the things that I got was that he said he was proud of the library, and I thought, okay, well that he must be the one that founded the library. And at that point in time, I didn't know anything about Narcissus Marsh. I knew nothing about him founding the library. It could have been a library named for him that was
Right.
built after him. I had no idea. But
Yeah.
um, so when I got home, I started putting all these pieces together. The mystery is that um, several several stories say that he and his niece were estranged, but historically, I've proven otherwise.
Oh,
So I was able to solve a history mystery that from the 1600s, and that's in the book. And I also convey, the truth behind the ghost's presence and all that other stuff. So it's pretty
people,
cool.
you need to get this book.
So I felt like Jessica Fletcher, Murder She Wrote, because I was trying to figure out.
You even live in her state.
I do live in her state.
Yes,
I do. So yeah, so that was my favorite. My favorite chapter about being a detective.
I love it. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Um, so there were, gosh, a whole host of ghosts and crazy things. Dublin was filled with crazy things. Um, did you know that there is a church that has a Dracula connection?
No.
So I can I can talk about that briefly. I know we're running out of time.
If you
But,
want to go a little longer, that's fine. It's up to you.
I'll I can just end here and then summarize the rest of some of the
Okay,
books so that people will get interested enough to look at it.
great.
So the Christ Church in Cathedral in Dublin um, uh, is known to have had a heart in a box, an actual heart in a box. Um, in the book, I explain whose heart it is, and there was a corpse in the basement that I sensed. Saw a man that died in the basement, and the tour guide then told us about a corpse they found in the basement and who he was. So that's in there. I had sketched him out just before she talked about it.
Fantastic.
Okay, that's cool. So that's in there. I do see that I have a whole I have the whole 2 paragraph story about the heart in the box. The heart was actually stolen from the cathedral, and then it was recovered um,
Okay.
6 years ago. But somebody's heart was in a box. Who would want to steal that? It's just
Depends
weird.
on whose heart it was.
It was it was an archbishop's heart,
Okay. There.
but it was from it was from over 1,000 years ago. um,
Oh, so yeah, this is a holy relic type thing that
yeah, yeah,
somebody is. Yeah,
yeah.
I get
So
it.
I'll end kind of on the Dracula connection. This cathedral, Christ Church's cathedral, and by the way, nearby there's the gates of hell. It's known as the gates of hell. I'll just tease it there. But so, interestingly enough, Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, was born
Uh-huh.
in Dublin, and he attended this church.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I've been to the church.
You have?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
just briefly.
Well,
But
so he the we were told that the church influenced his description of Dracula's castle.
yeah,
So I can see that.
fantastic.
Yeah, and there's so in the book there's another kicker. I'm not going to reveal it. But why how why he settled on someone like Dracula as his main character? It had something to do with his own health. So I'll leave it
Interesting.
there.
Okay.
Is that big enough of a tease for you?
You've gotten us lots of cliffhangers and teases. And so, yeah, this is something we all need to read. And folks, get Rob's other books too. He really, he's an excellent author and he knows how to put the information out
Oh, you're very
and
kind.
how to put the stories out. So, and it takes a lot for me to give that kind of praise. Um,
Thank you.
because I'm hard to please. So, um,
I don't know. You're one of the most easygoing guys I know. I mean, look at all the dead people you talk to, and you never turn them away.
I like people, but I'm,
You're dead ones.
you know, before I before I say somebody's good at what they're doing and publicize that and put my name behind that, they have to be good at what they're doing. That's what I mean.
I
I'm
agree.
I'm fussy about that. So,
Thank you.
um, yeah, thank you. Okay, we've got everything up there. Now, is there anything else you want to do to sum up to put with the book collections in general? Anything else you want to add
Sure.
or
Yeah, I can describe the different book collections that I have. So I have 11 published books, working on number 12. Actually, I have 7 more in the queue. Um, so this one is part of the Ghost on a Medium's Vacation series. The other ones in the series are Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation and Ghosts of the Birdcage Theater, as we talked about. Um, but Ghosts of Ireland is truly, I don't know, they're all kind of special to me. But
right?
so then the Pets in the Afterlife series, and I'm honored to say that Pets in the Afterlife 3 won an award for 3 years in a row as one of the best grief books, by Book Authority, which just blows my mind. But on the other hand, it makes me feel good that people are getting comfort from
Right.
it. So my Pets in the Afterlife 4 about cats spirits is the book that came out just before this one. So if anybody has a cat, you can learn all the different ways that cats communicate differently from dogs. And then the Ghosts and Spirits series has some really cool stories in it. The Kindred Spirits book about how I befriended Ed from Spirit without ever meeting him in life. Case files of inspired ghost tracking that you and I talked about, where we went into homes and found out all the ghosts that were there and
Right.
helped cross them over. And Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead and Ghosts and Spirits are my first 2 books that will give people a good foundation of the explanations of the afterlife. So, and October's around the corner. Get in the haunted mood.
Right. And, the Victorians, one of their favorite pastimes at Christmas Eve was reading ghost stories. Because at midnight, the ghosts on Christmas
Yes,
Eve, Christmas Day, the ghosts couldn't touch them. And so ghost stories were all year round but especially Christmas time for the Victorians. So,
and I want to give you a plug here because you had me on during Christmas time, and we talked about the ghosts of Christmas past. So folks need to go back into your archives and find that show because it was really cool.
that would be great. And my YouTube channel has that. I'll try to add that link in on this too. Well, actually, this will go out on my YouTube channel as well, and I'll have a link to that and to the Facebook page it's on, both, so that people
Cool.
can get that. Great. Well, this has been fantastic, fascinating, and it always flies by too fast.
Well, thank you, William. I totally agree that the time really flies. But it was great sharing some of the experiences with you about my adventures in Ireland, and I I hope folks find this book really interesting and helpful, especially when they travel to these places. Um,
Yeah,
and I would love to hear any kind of feedback.
and remember, all of the paranormal is connected to the history of people, and when you have history, you're going to have paranormal. So open up and listen. So
Absolutely.
excellent. Well,
Well,
Rob,
thank you for having me again, and I look
thank you.
forward to getting together again. Stay cool.
Yes, and stay dry
Will
with
do.
your humidity. Okay. Good night,
Thanks.
everybody.